got a fun one. Now remember a few weeks ago we did Wolverine. We had a Batman that we turned into a Wolverine. We used nails for claws, so he's got metal claws, the whole shebang. Well, when I posted my original work in progress photos, people were like, oh, you should turn it into a Dark Claw from the Amalgam Universe, which is a mixture of Batman and Wolverine. And I was like, you know what? That's awesome. I couldn't do it there because he's got different kind of the spikes. They're just different. Well, I found this Duke Thomas body a couple of weeks ago, super cheap. I think it was $9. And the head obviously wouldn't work with it because I had like that funky mask and like the rabbit ears. But I have this Hush head, and he will be perfect because he's got the screaming face. We're gonna have to make the mask anyway. This guy's gonna be awesome. Plus he's got really thick shoulders, and Darkclaw had all this cape stuff, so we're gonna add spikes. I think this guy will end up looking absolutely amazing. Let's go ahead and jump in and do Darkclaw. First thing is we need to get this symbol off. I've had him soaking for a few minutes, and I've been able to get most of it off with just some needle nose pliers. There we go. If you don't have needle nose pliers in your customizing toolkit, you need to get them because they are lifesavers. I've got glue in place on the shoulders and on the face, and so I'm going to get some of this in place, some of the milliput. And remember, it's going to look weird right now, but this is just about getting it in place. And then we'll mold it in just a little bit and get it to where it needs to be. And then here on the shoulders is we're going to do he's got the little stripes and the spike. So we just want to have it in place, and then we'll mold in the spike. So don't worry about it looking super awesome right now because it's not going to. It's just to make it so that things are in place and you know that the super glue is going to hold, and then you can start molding. And that's what I'm going to start doing. What I'm doing right now is I'm just taking a toothpick, and you can see I've got kind of the basic shape molded in, but he's got like spikes and stuff, and so I'm going to try and put the divots in with this and then see if I can mold in these spikes. I should be able to do it without doing too much damage, because I don't want any of this to be too weak. That's the problem, is that I want to add these spikes and stuff, but I also can't have the milliput once it's dry be too weak. And so it's going to take a little bit of just kind of fine tuning, putting in some stuff back here to make it so that it's got those things. But just be patient with yourself and just try and get it to work as best you can, while also leaving enough space so that the milliput doesn't weaken and break once you're done. So just experiment. All right, so what you can see is I've added the spikes, and I added like a chest light here so you can see his pecs and stuff. And then I continued sort of the lines down here because he's got like the tiger look, or the stripes from Wolverine. And then up here, I just kind of molded it to go back. It's hard to kind of get a good feel right now for how this guy is going to look once painted. But like with the Batman, once I had him painted as Wolverine, he looked quite amazing. And so I'm just hoping that this does the same. It was hard to get this spiked in the way that it is in the comics, partially because I don't want the milliput to get so weak that it's going to break. I mean, milliput's really strong from what I found, but if you go too thin, it's going to break. You know, so it's a resin, but it's not as like firm as plastic. So this is going to require just some playing around a little bit, and I think we're going to be at the end of the day okay. But as always, this is just an experiment, so cut yourself some slack. The screaming face looks real good though.
So I took a Dremel and I cleaned up around here, tightened up the edges a little bit as much as I felt comfortable, and I added a few gouges to try and make it look a little bit more like Darkclaw. Kind of tough. If I were 3D printing heads, it would be easier, but I don't 3D print heads, as you guys know. I like to mold them myself. So now we're just going to spray with some black spray paint, and then we will move on to the rest. I've got the face covered so that I don't mess up the eyes, and we'll just spray this guy. We got the black in place. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my flesh tone and
go around the mouth so that he can start to take shape as a real person. And I'm going to get a little bit high up here on the black, and then I can put more black on, but I want to make sure that it is up there on the lips and stuff. So in this, you can always go a little bit, get it a little bit higher than what you want, because it's much easier to go back over with the black and fix it. We're starting to look like a real person. Now, the thing about Dark Claw is it's the same deal with Wolverine, except Dark Claw has even less color. He's only got a selection of like the yellow up here and then the yellow on the stripes. And that's all. So he's really kind of monochromatic. So we're going to have to figure out what we want to do. Because he's not really black. He's more like a dark purple. So I'm thinking about dry brushing some purple metallic on him. I'm not quite sure. Let's get the yellow done and then we'll make that call. Now, sometimes he's shown with his like stripes up here on the shoulders underneath his cape. Sometimes he's shown with them above his cape. With how this is kind of set up from the Duke Thomas, I'm going above because it's all really nicely divided here and it just looks really nice. So that's why I'm going to do it on his shoulder so it's over the cape, and then we'll start working on the ones around his body. The great thing about using this Duke Thomas body is how all of this stuff is set up and divided, because it becomes really easy to get these stripes in and to make them look like they were meant to be here because of how his armor is kind of set up. And since this character has been drawn in many different ways, and he's always drawn as being really big and having just lots of folds in his cape and lots of crazy stuff, this body really does work. Now, if you wanted to do a more classic like version, if there is such a thing for an amalgam character like this, then you could go with a regular Batman. But I really like how this looks. It makes him look just bigger. It makes him look to me much more like a cross between Wolverine and Batman. And so I'm really glad that I chose this one. It's different, it's unique, and I like to be different and unique. So there you go. Now let's play around here. So he's not really black. He's more of like, when they show like just hints of other colors, and he's got kind of a purple to him. So I've got this metallic purple here. And I'm just going to go over some of the black here. The yellow's not even dry yet, so I'm just going to kind of go in here and see what that does. You can kind of see when it catches the light, it looks a little bit better. Definitely adds a little bit more character to him. And I think this is more correct for what he's shown, is giving him a little bit of a purple. And we'll just dry brush it around. I think that'll work pretty well. It at the very least gives some character to him so that he's not just straight black. I think that's going to be better. You guys have seen me do this a whole bunch of times with the fabric paint to add just some texture to things like this. And I'm going to do it to all of his stripes so that they have a three-dimensional barrier, which will make it look that much more real and that much more purposeful. So I'm just going to go through here on the bottom of all these, add this so that it looks like they're supposed to be there. And I'm going to do the same thing on the legs and on the arms. Make it look that these are molded on. All right, time for the eyes. I've just got a toothpick here I'm actually going to take some off. Had a little bit too much on. There we go. Oh, I got some on his head. All right, we can fix that. I'm using my magnifying glass. I'm just going to go in as best I can. So you guys know eyes are the hardest part. I tried to keep them so that I didn't have to paint them, but I wasn't able to. All right, I'm not sure if that's enough of an eye, but we'll try the other one, then we'll see them together. And I'm just going into these little slots that I have left, and guiding my finger as best I can. and hoping for the best. Because that's all you can do at this point. Oh, come on, let's get this other one. Not bad. Maybe I'll play around with it, but that's not too bad. So I've just been adding a little bit more purple highlights here, and I noticed that this leg is weird, and the reason is because it's on backwards, which I did not realize, and all of this is backwards, so maybe that's why he was so cheap. Before we get into the claws, the last thing is that he's got a silver belt. Now in some versions he's got like spiky things on here, in other versions he has kind of like a pouch belt. I'm just going to use this belt right here. It's different enough from a regular Batman belt. And that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to silver this up, and then I will show you what I've done with the claws. So on the Wolverine from a few weeks ago, these are the nails that I used as a claw. And a lot of you commented that, you know, they still look like nails. And I was fine with that, honestly, because it matched, and I thought it was cool looking. But I understand why, you know, some of you are like, oh, they look like nails. So what I did with these ones is because A, this is a bigger figure, I took much larger nails and I ground them down so that they're thin. And then I was actually able to ground in his little notches on them here. So he'll have much bigger claws, and as you can see, he's got the notches in there too, which I did not think I was going to be able to do. So these turned out pretty cool. And now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to cut some holes in his hands and glue them in place. Same technique as before, now with cooler claws. Looking great.
And there he is, Dark Claw. This was a really fun one. Now, you could do it any number of ways. If you wanted to make it more traditional, obviously you could go with a more traditional Batman body. Any Batman will do. And obviously I took some pretty big liberties because I chose this body because he's so big and he's got so many layers, but I liked that because Dark Claw in the comics is always shown as having like a gigantic cape that comes up over his shoulders into spikes and has a whole bunch of weirdness to him. And so for me, this was the way to go. I also could have, if I wanted, because grounding down these claws, I could have tried to arch them a little bit. There were things that I could have done to do that. And once I got them on, I was like, oh, they're very straight, which is fine because I think they would be straight in real life, you know, if you're popping them out of your arm. But so in yours, if you want to experiment with this and you want to use the same techniques when it comes to the nails so that he's got metal claws, you can do that. You can actually kind of round them out with the grinder. So for a first attempt, this is great. This isn't a character that I'm like super excited about, but I think he turned out pretty well. Obviously, if I wanted things perfect and I wanted them to be absolutely accurate, then I would have gotten another Batman body. I probably would have 3D printed a head or bought a 3D printed head. But you guys know me by now. I like to handcraft. I like to use the Milliput. I like to use my hands. And so that's the route that I go. You might want to go a different route, and that's totally cool. Just get out there, have fun, make some customs. Here's a shot of Dark Claw with Super Soldier, because remember I did that Super Soldier last year. And they look pretty good together. I'm going to display them together now. And I don't know if I'll do any other of these amalgam figures. I mean, there's Spider Boy, that might be a fun one, but he would require a couple different heads, or not just one, but he would require basically a Superboy body with an Impulse head. So I could, if I find those characters, who knows? This was a this was kind of a luck thing about finding this body for so cheap and being like, oh, I'm gonna do Dark Claw because people said I should with the Wolverine. So here he is. I'd love to see what you guys come up with in your Dark Claws. Get out there, customize, have fun. That's what this is about. I'm Stephen Human. Check out stephenhuman.com for all of my novels and quimbleys.com for all of your games, your board games, stuff like that. And I'll see you guys next week.